signing up for, I'm not gonna say the Chinese version.
I didn't realize that that
Redbook.
included.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they're just like, that's the problem taken.
The agenda.
Cool for you.
That's why I never do 23 and 60. That's why I never
Yeah,
do
2 weeks.
Because like
But I'm gonna just say, I listened to Supreme Court.
That should give me time.
All right, good evening and welcome to the City Council Conference meeting of Tuesday, January 14th. We have two items on the agenda. The first of these is discussion regarding the Central Oklahoma Long Range Transit Plan. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Looking forward to having the discussion tonight. I brought Chip Nolan with me from Embark, who's kind of co-leading the project with ACOG, and John Sharp right there might join us in a minute. I'm gonna let John sit here instead of me because they're gonna co-present it. I know, Councilor Nash. But they're gonna lead the discussion. This is a really interesting project as a region. I think hopefully you guys enjoy what they have to present. We'll answer any questions you have.
What questions we got last night?
I'll let you guys introduce
Thanks,
yourselves.
Taylor. All right, thank you. My name's Chip Nolan. I'm a planner with Embark. I'll walk us through the slides, but first I'm going to let John introduce himself and talk about how this fits in with what ACOG is.
Thanks, Chip. Appreciate you inviting us down today. So I'm with ACOG, the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. You, along with about 40 other communities and counties in Central Oklahoma, are our members. And every 5 years, we update the 30-year transportation plan for the region. In many of our transportation plans, we have not got really good future-looking or future vision of transit before. This plan is going to help us get that far into the future and start looking at what we could be when we grow up, so 30 years' time. So our 2050 plan is our next plan. And it takes into account a lot of the growth, population growth, employment growth, and the trips that are generated from that in our region. Invariably, what we have here is a fair amount of congestion, which I enjoyed coming into Norman this afternoon. And I just beat the train, which I was really glad about. So one of the things that we have to look at is more options for our folks moving around. And looking at this transit plan for our region, it gives us a better opportunity to plan for that. In the past, we've kept our transit system fairly static, so what you see is what you get, and we've projected that into the future. But this plan is really going to look and focus more on what we really could be in 20, 30 years' time, with the RTA on the table as well. That gives us even more things to look at. And Oklahoma City, as you'll probably hear later, has kicked off their first BRT, and that's not meaning that other cities couldn't have a BRT, especially if you do something around North Base or something. That's an old term because I've been here for a long time. But just wanted to kind of give you an overview. This is very important for the region, so it is very good for Norman Transit, Oklahoma City Transit, and Edmond Transit, but it's very important for the whole region to think forward like this, as we have probably not done since the 2005 plan, which is amazing. So it's been 20 years since we've really done something like this. So I'll hand it back to Chip.
Thank you, John. And the only other thing I'll add to that is that incorporating this into ACOG's long-range transportation plan increases our chances of securing some additional federal dollars. There's certain steps and requirements that ACOG follows, and having these projects and this plan in there sets us up to go after some additional federal funds down the road. So today we'll go through our project overview, vision and goals, as well as a project schedule. So first we'll start with the project overview. So these are our project partners. We've worked very closely with RTA, Edmond, Norman, and ACOG in this plan. They've been with us in lots of meetings, lots of discussions, lots of emails, and we're very happy to partner with everybody on this slide on this project. Everybody's input is really important. We're working together as a group. This started as in MAPS 4 has funded a lot of great projects for the city of Oklahoma City, and within that we knew that there were some planning needs that needed to happen, and so there were some planning funds within the MAPS program we approached ACOG, and with ACOG's help, we're able to use those planning funds and make it a region, more of a regional transit plan, because we recognize the need. These are our partners. So what project description? We're looking at the what, the when, and the how. So our goal is to assess local services to allow more dynamic and proactive operations as the region starts to change and transit starts to change over the next 10, 20 years. We were going to look at recommendations on how we're going to create this integrated network with everybody so that we can start to think and travel regionally as a transit system. And then we're also going to look at how, what investments are needed and when and how much is that going to cost to make this a reality. So this is where we're at in this study. We have 3 phases to this project. First, we have our assess phase. Currently we're nearing the end of our assess phase, which includes previous plan review, existing conditions, and then a needs assessment and gap analysis for transit. We're going into, in the next several weeks, the evaluate phase. It includes scenario planning, creating an evaluation framework to evaluate those scenarios, and then a network development. And then at the end, we'll have our recommend phase that outlines the facilities, the fleet, the staffing, the costs, and that are all required to make that vision a reality.
What do you think the time frame is on that process?
We hope to wrap up this summer. So I've got the project schedule in a later slide, but hoping to wrap up this summer. So the outcomes for this project, this is a little bit more detail on the previous slide. We're going to be looking at facilities, fleet. We'll be doing a risk assessment to identify potential hazards and risks that come with these projects. We'll be looking at a programmatic level, costing and funding, including capital and operations and maintenance that are critically important to make this happen. We also want to try and future-proof this as much as we can. If this plan is going to, as a 30-year plan horizon, we want to think about how can we make minor updates as we go along to make this plan relevant as we move into the future. Phasing, it's really important. How is this going to be phased in over time of these projects? And then we'll also be looking at case studies. We're looking at other cities that have maybe a similar environment, maybe have gone through some similar growing pains, service models, size, and we'll be looking at doing in-depth analysis of those cities and lessons learned and how they did what they did. So here's our overall project schedule. We've done some in-depth stakeholder interviews. We had a really great workshop. Taylor was able to join us for that a couple weeks ago. Some great discussion with ODOT, ACOG, Edmund Norman staff during that workshop. And then we're going to kick off the public engagement portion of this project in a couple of weeks. Slide at the end with more detail on that, as well as a project website as we go into our evaluate phase. So with the project group, with the Edmund and Norman and RTA, we've spent a lot of time talking about goals. And we're going to use these goals to help us create our the way we evaluate the different scenarios. So first we have provide communities with meaningful access to transit. That's really looking at how much transit, the level of transit, the amount of transit that's appropriate for the region, for each community, creating a compelling rider experience that's access to transit within the community, but also between communities. Offering competitive service options, so that means that we want to attract people to make this an attractive option for people that want to use it for both choice riders and non-choice riders. And then finally, utilizing resources effectively. We all know that we have limited resources and a limited budget, and we have to be very careful with how we spend that to maximize the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish. So here, and then we'll get into developing a draft transit vision. So we've got 3 buckets here. We call it resource projects. We were fortunate enough to launch our first bus rapid transit line in December of 2023, the Northwest Rapid. We're very happy with how that's gone so far. And MAPS is funding 2 more BRT lines to the northeast and the south side. So these projects have a certain level of funding tied to them. One of them's already launched, and one of them will launch within the other 2 will launch within the next 5 years. Then we have what we're calling our catalytic regional projects. This would be the commuter rail line from Edmond to Norman, as well as the hub downtown to Santa Fe Depot. So this would be more on the 10 to 15 year plan horizon. And then finally, unconstrained regional projects. These could be in the near the end of that plan horizon, 20 to 30 years. Again, this would be the other RTA corridors, the airport corridor, the east-west corridor, and then a potential streetcar extension as well. But on top of that, it's really important as we start to think about how does our local service interact with all of the high-capacity transit that's planned for the region. We'll be looking at service types. So that's high-frequency local service, coverage routes, which just means less frequent service in areas where there's less demand, looking at microtransit, and then we'll also be looking at service span, frequency, and then the facilities that are required to make that happen. We're going to have some significant transfer points and regional hubs, transit hubs potentially. So how can we modify the local service in a way that makes sense with some of these high-capacity transit that's coming online? Project schedule. So this project kicked off in August of 2024. We've had lots of stakeholder engagement. Again, we're nearing the end of our assess phase, entering the evaluate phase, and then just continuing to coordinate with RTA, Edmond, Norman, ODOT, and ACOG throughout the plan. And then finally, we've got our virtual town hall planned for January 30th from 11:30 to 1. We'll be doing a much deeper dive into the results of the assess phase. So looking at potential transit markets, transit demand, kind of the results of this first phase. We'll be getting into a lot more detail during that meeting, more than I'm going to go to here at this meeting. The project website is live, connectcentralok.com. Hope that you join us for the town hall, that you're able to look around on the website and spread the word so we can get lots of input on this plan. So it's a pretty high level overview right now. There's not a lot to report because it's just a lot of existing conditions and going through census data and things like that right now. So, but thank you for having me, and I'll try and answer any questions as best I can.
Question from council? Yes,
sir. On the bus part of it, a lot of having Mayor and I both been involved with ACOG for a long time, or me filling in not only for Larry but Mayor Clark as well and Mayor Miller. One of the discussions about the regional transit, a lot of the focus is on the train because that's what's I think most exciting to everybody probably. But a lot of the discussion has been about how for the train to really function, there has to be an interconnected bus transit system around it that isn't just Norman's bus system, and then it stops at the city limit lines, and then there's not one and more, and then picks up in OKC, and then Edmond has their own different system that's separate. And so is that still kind of the overall goal, is a metropolitan transit system similar to like DART and BART and all that stuff?
That's our goal, it's where I've been really excited to have Taylor and John and Edmond's staff and ODOT staff they're at every meeting and every step along the way, because really our goal is to think regionally with this plan, and that's our hope.
And I've seen recently that Moore was having some discussions about microtransit and potential bus routes in the future. Are you guys working with them as well on anything like that?
So this is just a planning study. We're making recommendations. We're not telling any city what to do by any means. Although I was involved, I was following along with what the city of Moore was doing. They hired a consultant, Olson, that I've used several times before, to do a public transit feasibility study that was very specific to their community. They looked at different potential transit solutions, potential costs, service levels. That study was completed and presented to council. They haven't taken any action so far that I'm aware of, but we will be at, the study area includes Moore and includes the whole region.
And then after Midwest City and Del City and Moore got out of the RTA group, I recall Tinker Air Force Base as an individual entity expressing interest in having it come to them. And maybe even there being federal funding or planning at the base for that. Is that still, as far as you know, something that
So
they're trying to...
I do want to be careful that we're, I'm not representing the RTA here, and they have their approved alternatives analysis, which is just, all that is their route alignment in the mode is what the RTA is approved. And so, I know currently RTA is Edmond, Norman, and Oklahoma City, and the alignment out east would serve Tinker. But as far as exactly how that would work, and I don't want to speak for the RTA.
Okay. And it does include things like city streets and connectivity there, and then
Absolutely.
trails and different things like that as well.
Yeah.
It's not just cars and,
Yeah,
Or
we
trains.
recognize it's important to get people to their final destination from once they get off the boat.
so it's a real multimodal plan.
That's my hope.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question on demographics. Since we were in the comprehensive land use plan update process and have reached consensus to what we think our population will be in roughly that same timetable, and this is a metropolitan area-wide planning project. Just curious, when the numbers are known, what our neighboring agencies' population growth estimates look like?
So that is John's
That's
wheelhouse.
that's my
You're gonna-
problem. So, we're in 2025. We have to complete our plan in October, November of 2026. So by next year, early next year, we should start having 2050 numbers. And what we'll do is we always line up with what the cities are telling us. So if you guys have gone into great depth and great detail in regards to where you think your folks are gonna be, then we take that same number, and say you went to 2040 or 2045, and we extrapolate that out. But we'll take your numbers, and then we do scenario planning and other good stuff along with that to determine where we think people are gonna be and where we think they're gonna be driving to and from. So that's fun.
Thank you.
That's the other hope, is that we can build a framework to update this periodically every, maybe, I don't know what it is, ends up being 5 years or so that as you learn more about your growth patterns, we can tweak this plan as we go along.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just curious how close you guys were looking at existing bicycle networks. And are you gonna make any recommendations of like maybe where new trails need to go in order to, basically make a comprehensive network out of the transportation plan?
So our primary goal is transit, but we will, incorporate any plans, existing infrastructure, bike lanes that you have, if you have any bicycle or pedestrian master plans, we would incorporate that in this as well.
Excellent. And then I saw Oklahoma City received it was a nearly $20 million REAP grant. They announced that yesterday. Could you talk about how maybe how that plays
Yeah,
into this?
so I was, that was something I worked on, really proud of that.
Awesome.
We
Congrats.
won, thank you very much, $19.5 million to improve 360 bus stops in Oklahoma City and add roughly, I think, 10 miles of sidewalk to and from bus stops. So the goal within this is, to improve connectivity to and from the stops, and that's really important. And so we know, again, we want to build on what you all are doing, what Edmond's doing, what Norman's doing. Edmond has Edmond Shift, you all have Go Norman, and Oklahoma City has their own version of their own plans. And so that's kind of what we want to bring all those together, planned improvements, things that you need to do, and we want to incorporate that in this plan.
Awesome. That's great. Given that you worked on that, I didn't know I'd get to answer this question. Are there any other opportunities like that floating out there that we should be aware of?
Sure. So the RAISE program has been around for a while. It's had different names: Tiger,
yeah.
Build, RAISE. I think we'll be getting a new transportation bill in the next year or two, probably. So the name and the scoring criteria might change a little bit, but my guess is that some version of this will continue to be around.
Excellent. Thank you.
I know you're not representing the RTA, but I was curious if there is I saw summer is when this is supposed to wrap up for the study. When could we expect conversation around a public vote to enact some of this?
It's a great RTA question, and that's just completely outside of what I can answer and what this study is going to look at.
Does ACOG know?
We've heard late 25, early 26, but I don't think they've finalized where they're gonna be yet.
So maybe not a realistic.
It's not coming up this spring. Like, I think there was some thought at one time that it was gonna be early this year, but it looks like it's going to later or maybe 26.
I think that was their original hope. And they looked at the elections calendars for questions that were already on the ballot or anticipated on the ballot in Oklahoma City and in Edmond. And they, were trying to avoid conflict and muddy the water. And I think they're looking January 26 to April 26, except March. There was something else on somebody's ballot in March that they wanted to avoid. So we think first quarter of 2026.
Oh, that got pushed back quite a bit.
It does. John, you hit it right on the head, as we grow up. And that's being an influx state. What are we gonna do with the cars? What are we gonna do with all the rest? Those of us who have seen other systems, bus and transportation systems in other parts of the world and in the United States. I mean, I wouldn't go to Chicago and get a car for love nor money. There's a perfectly good transportation system. I can get almost everywhere I want and maybe have to walk a quarter of a mile. In the wintertime, that's lousy, but most of the rest of the time, it's okay. It's encouraging to me, to those of us that look at this growth, that this plan is coming up, because I mean, we've got so many eggs on the pan. It's hard enough to keep up with what we've got. And for you guys to be championing a way for us to be able to do this, that we can at least modify. The idea of regionality is essential for us now, I think, just as a government, because what we do here affects Noble, affects everything else. And I'd hate to leave those towns, our neighboring towns, our sister cities here, out of the conversation. So when it's appropriate, would you please tell us, and we can sit down here and get all the, I don't know if we can get all the councils, but we can get the mayors together to at least sit down here, and the people that know transportation, to be able to figure out how we can look, how are we gonna get to Newcastle, how are we gonna get somewhere else from here if we're a hub, so.
We will keep you apprised at ACOG this month. We'll keep you apprised, the same sort of presentation in regards to let everybody know what's going on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, from the standpoint of, what we've got right now might be the best. And we're all grumpy about it, that it's not good enough. But we're gonna now put, 30% more population into this area in the next 20, 30 years. So that does then bring all sorts of other concerns. And that's why we're looking at transit, we're looking at bike ped and other options to get around, because just driving your car from A to B may not be that easy.
Just don't go to tuk-tuks and little motorcycles that they have in Bangkok,
Dangerous.
like flies. Any other questions from council? Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for an excellent presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the update on the litter crew and wraparound services. Ms. Michelle.
Hey. All right, let me get all this set up real quick.
Get back in, like they should pay what it cost them.
All right. Well, thanks for having me tonight. I'm so glad to see everybody again. It's been a while. Tonight I'm going to give you a brief update about what's going on with the litter crew. That's we've called it, right? Opportunity knocks a better way. Just to give a little background again, as you recall, the litter crew was originally formed in 2002, primarily to deal with litter everywhere, to deal with rural problems in the roadway and the drainage areas, to deal with open dumping, right? We had a lot of open dumping in the rural areas. And then in 2017, it was included in the Lake Thunderbird TMDL Monitoring and Compliance Plan as a BMP. So that's essentially how the litter crew came to be and what it's for, et cetera. Essentially, it's been funded through the general fund for all those years. We, our wonderful mayor and our city manager, came and said, what about these other places? I think you had gone to Tulsa, I think it was. What about these other places that have programs where they do litter abatement, but also provide services and low barrier employment to folks in the community that need that kind of thing, right? And so it was with that we were able to draft an RFP and come up with a better way, Opportunity Knocks. And Mental Health Association of Oklahoma was the winning response to the RFP. Well, You know, it took a while. It was pretty large in terms of funding, right? We were worried about the cost. It was around we'll talk a little more about it, but $360,000, right? We had $50,000 from the general fund for Little Cruise, so that's a huge problem. So it's been sitting for a while, trying to figure out how we were gonna fund it, if it could come to be. Well, your leadership was great again, and because we're part of the Distributor Settlement Agreement, the opioid funding settlement agreement, that money is specifically for programs that address opioid use disorder and co-occurring substance use disorder. So now I'm going to use OUD, SUD because it's easier for me. Programs that focus on that, right? And that's a big pot of money over 18 years. So maybe we could tweak the program a little bit to fit that, right? But there are other reasons why we shifted. That's a huge part. But let's look at some of the linkage that we see between homelessness and job insecurity and opioid and OUD and SUD issues, right? They are closely linked. It's not necessarily that OUD, SUD is the cause for these things, but it can be a result of these things too. So, they're linked both ways. So what a great way if we can help folks that are experiencing and or recovering from OUD, SUD, as well as improve community relations and make our city beautiful and provide an income to folks who don't have it. Wow, right? Win-win. So that's why we did it. That's what we're doing. How does it work? We talked about it a little bit before with the roving van. It'll go out 3 days a week. They're going to focus on areas of concentrated vulnerability. I know that sounds weird, but where they know people are vulnerable and could use help, where they see maybe some panhandling, that kind of thing. The first people that will be targeted or focused will be those folks who are experiencing or recovering from OUD, SUD. That doesn't mean they're exclusively them. They're the first. After that, it will be folks who haven't ridden on the van at all yet, and it will be, other folks who need help. So 8 participants a day, $65, they get paid at the end of the day. They're provided lunch, and the cool thing about this lunch is that they will be with their case management workers, and they will be getting those services linked up with different things, finding out what they need for those off days, if they need to go find identification or healthcare, that kind of thing. Wraparound services, same type of wraparound services that we were talking about, but more, now we have recovery support as well.
And council, when those opioid settlement dollars, notices went out, hey, you're gonna get this much money. Sometimes you get news like that and you think, oh, great, now what will we do with that? How can we really make an impact on the lives of those affected and hopefully a lasting impact on the community overall? And just being able to work with the contractor and kind of describe the parameters of what we've got to work with on a mechanism that one, it's not like, oh, here's a brand new program to put in your general fund and, further constraint on those dollars. But really, holding hands and bless this woman, she's a saint and has the patience of Job, to get the right set of gears put together. And oh my gosh, we think we're gonna come up with a solution that's it's healthy for the general fund. It really is the way those dollars were intended to be used. And you'll remember council did take action and used other opioid settlement dollars to assist the Virtue Center, and they'll be helping up to 100 Norman residents who have been impacted by the opioid crisis. So I'll tell you what, I think I would put our efforts up against anybody's in the use of those opioid dollars.
And that is a very good point, and something I want to highlight, because we are going to impact these community members who need it. That's huge. That's a big deal. But we're also going to improve our community relations in general. And I also think that's huge, because I don't know about you guys, but it can be difficult sometimes to have those kinds of conflicts in the community where people are mad at each other, and that's not Norman. We're great. We love each other. We're an inclusive community. That's what we're doing. We're working together, right? So this is a great way. I think it's going to be a great opportunity or a way to help kind of make that go away a little bit. I hope that's my goal. The metrics, so we do have a different metric with the OUD SUD piece. They say that 25% of the folks that they do that they contact with, that get on the bus, that participate, will access recovery services. So they think that because they said that it takes 3 to 6 times of interactions to build trust, but after that happens, they have good success offering and convincing folks that services that are available are useful to them, if that makes sense. A lot of words. Anyway, they're going to provide reports, monthly, semi-annual, and annual reports, of course, and I'm sure you're going to get a lovely update monthly like we do with the other programs that we have. I'm kind of, I don't know, we'll see. I'm pretty excited about it. I know I get excited about everything, but really, it's the community relation piece. I really love this idea that we can come back together and, all right. Here are the costs. They haven't changed. We had talked earlier or mentioned before that maybe we could collaborate with Oklahoma City to have one program manager. Unfortunately, that did not happen with Oklahoma City, so we couldn't do that. But around the same time, that's when Mr. Pyle came to us about the funds with the opioid settlement. So I think it could work. There are some internal things we need to work out, but that's easy because it's public works and utilities and we get along, so that's great. And then here we go. What's next? Finalize the contract. So where we're at, Ashlyn Wilkerson, wonderful attorney, and Anthony Purinton, I love him too. They went ahead and created this wonderful contract. Thank you so much. It is with MHAO right now. They're reviewing. They'll come back. We'll negotiate, etc. We'll do the internal negotiations, figuring out how we're going to do maintenance, etc. Finalize the contract, bring it to you. Purchase everything, do the networking and marketing. And then I would love to kick this off in April, right? Because April is a great month, right? Okay. Because April is Earth. Thank you. Green Norman Eco-Bration this year. Green Norman Eco-Bration. Anyway, it'd be great. Also, hazmat should be done by then too, so that will be kicked off in April. Can you imagine what an amazing April it would be? All right. Any questions?
Yes.
360,000, that's annually.
Yes.
And I see we got $4 million in opioid settlement.
Yes.
Is the intent to spend all of that on this program?
I don't know.
It will be coming to us in chunks.
Over 18 years.
Yeah, so our ability to kind of line up payments with expenses really works out good from an accounting perspective. We might think differently if they just hand us a check for $4 million.
Yeah, that could be.
Right, that's kind of what I was asking, is like, so it's,
I think it's an 18-year, yeah.
okay. I'll let somebody else go.
How long will it take to finalize the contract, and will we see it on the next agenda?
I certainly would love that. I don't know. It's like I said, it's sitting with MHA right now. So as soon as they get back with their comments, then I can send it back to the attorneys. And I mean, if they don't have many comments, then it shouldn't take much, right?
I think the one of the other things we want to do is also maybe get some prior approval that this program meets the
Oh yeah, good point.
the guidelines
That is a
that
good
the
point.
state has set, just to make sure that we get the thumbs up from them before we enact it.
Permission and not forgiveness.
That's a good point.
So how long does it take after finalization to be ready for April?
How long will it take?
After you find out we can, do it and then we vote on it.
Oh, yeah. So let's look at it. If we know and it's approved, all we need to do then is purchase the materials and outfit the truck, and we should be able to start.
One of the things we did talk about with this van is the ability to wrap it and
We said we would wrap it, yeah.
we want everybody to know what we're doing, how we're doing it, how this is beneficial to everyone impacted. So artwork, definitely not an accountant's thing, but we've got people who have an idea about what they may look like, including the contractor who I actually, you know, you're driving around, I was driving around Edmond and I looked over and saw a van and it had this sticker on it. Lo and behold, it started the conversation. So how valuable is it to just make sure we're
And here is a
visible.
picture of the van.
So will those employees that could be potentially hired to run all this, are some of them already employed or will they be hiring
Do you
on
mean,
people?
okay, I see what you're saying. You mean for the program itself?
Mhm.
They have people ready to go in those positions,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Now I understand what you're, sorry, I didn't understand. That's my word. Yes, MH, but they also have, I'm sorry. They also have these programs already up and running in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So the scheme is there. It's a plug and chug kind of thing. Sorry.
If there is any settlement money left over from this, is there an option for us to be able to potentially put that towards preventative measures instead of reactionary measures? And maybe we can kind of head this off at the head of the stream a little bit.
If there is, and whether it's educational components, there's probably a ton of really, really good educational material out there. If council identifies some of those preemptive measures, we'll do the homework, figure out what we can figure out,
Well, I would
and
say
bring you back a budget.
even if we partnered with one of our existing agencies in the city, like Virtue Center or, you know, somebody who is experienced it, they already do this kind of work. So for them to have something like this, that would be incredible. So I just, if that's a possibility down the road, I would just like to keep it in mind. And also, I heard you mention the updates. When will we receive updates on this? Will it be monthly?
Yes, well,
Okay.
if you allow us to come talk to you, yes, they will submit monthly reports and a semi-annual and an annual report.
Will this be during oversight or? Cool. That was my.
You know, and that opportunity for us to, you know, it comes to demographics and number of bodies touched, much like we anticipate in HMIS. You know, how will we measure success, and we'll build that dashboard together.
Yes, sir.
The contract, it's a 1 year? Is that, what have we entered?
It is 1 year,
1 year, so.
but it has the ability to redo if we want to.
so
But it's
council-
always also based with what, if the funding is there,
Right. So council have the opportunity to evaluate,
absolutely.
is it working, is this the best use of these funds? And then if not, council could take a different direction.
Exactly.
Or if it is very successful, keep it going. Cool.
City Manager Pyle, refresh my memory, were cities the only ones to get this, or did counties get settlement money as well?
I'm not sure. So.
I think tribes did too.
This kind of goes back to Councilmember Hinkle's point. I mean, if there's an opportunity to collaborate with the county, talk about preventative services, instead of throwing people in jail, maybe there's an opportunity to do, I just think there's an opportunity there, so,
I will post that question here in seconds.
appreciate that.
Because that would be a thing through Judge Tupper and his
Exactly.
court.
Yeah, during diversion
Yeah.
court.
Oh, that would be
Use them up.
I'd just like to add to that, the Cleveland County Community Corrections Planning Commission is also a big part of how the alternative sentencing stuff goes and way of the funding, so maybe that would be something to work with that committee on.
Yes, sir.
The settlement money, is it 4 million over 18 years, is it equal? Because that's $222,000 a year.
It is, we think it'll be relatively evenly distributed. And there was a budget, we had historically paid for litter removal out of the general fund, and we will be looking at our solid waste fund. You know, at the end of the day, all the trash is coming from somewhere, and when the wind blows, you never really know where it's coming from. So we want to make sure we're, you know, appropriately accounting for the difference between opioid settlement money and the final cost of the contract to be determined.
Oh, yes, sir.
I just maybe think of another thought. Is there a recycling component to this at all?
There could be,
Oh, thank you.
and you know I'm gonna be looking at it, so.
I figured I was asking the right person, yeah.
So what if, yeah, that we're able to analyze at maybe the transfer station, what is the makeup of what we pick up?
Well, that's where my line of thinking was. I mean, we have to pay money for everything we throw away. If we can divert it from the landfill and bring the overall cost down, I mean, it's just more money that we can spend on the program.
Amen.
That's because trash guys rule. Yes, ma'am.
So that means we would be reporting to DEQ, like what's being removed out of the environment?
Yes, I actually report yes,
Okay.
yes, we will.
Thank you, Michelle. You know, it's been amazing how much impact you've made on the city over your career and how many brilliant solutions you've come up with that are not only saving us money, but saving us face and making this place a better place. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you, guys.
You're here.
All right.
Well, I love this town, so.
That's obvious.
Likewise.
We are adjourned.